Hello to you all and welcome. If you're new, I'm Jennifer. Cory and I are so very happy to have you here with us on our channel. We have 6 amazing DIYs to share with you. The great thing about some of these items is that you can use them any time of year to elevate the look of your home and not just Christmas. We love to recreate those really expensive decor items that we all see when scrolling through Pinterest or on social media, but at a fraction of the price. To recreate high-end items, it's really all in the details. Our goal is to make the DIY creations appear like you bought them off of a shelf in a high-end retail shop. Today we're recreating looks from CB2, Bed Bath & Beyond, Antique, Farmhouse, and Magnolia. We also have a couple of creations that are all our own. We hope you enjoyed today's video, and now let's get to creating. Our first creation is inspired by this branch candle holder from Bed Bath & Beyond, priced at $266. For this project, you'll need a branch from your yard, taper candle holder cups, we used 5 total, spray sealant, and some rub and buff. You'll need to find a branch that has thick offshoots so that it can support the weight of your taper candles. This could also be done with votive or tea light holders as well. Your branch should have offshoots but also have the ability to sit straight on its own. We purchased these candle cups from Amazon. They came in a set of 10, but we only needed 5 for this project today. I decided to paint the cups with some rub and buff and European gold, but this is certainly optional. We also sprayed the entire branch with some sealant just to kill anything living on it and also to help preserve the beauty of the branch. Next, it was time to attach the cups to the branch, and we did this with hot glue, but the really important part is to make sure each cup is level so that you don't have candles sitting every which way. If we attached one and it wasn't right, we simply removed it and started again. You also want to make sure that the cups are spaced in a way that makes sense and will give you the best effect when all the candles are in place, so take the time to figure out where you want them placed. I wish you could all see this branch in person because it is so very beautiful with all its weathered details. I can't wait to style it on our dining table for Christmas this year. We saved $258 by creating this candelabra. If you had to buy all the supplies except for the branch, it would cost you $22 to create, a far cry from the retail price of $266. Our next creation is a piece of art using aged music sheets. You'll need a canvas of any size you choose, music sheets, tea or coffee for staining, and matte Mod Podge. We found this book of Christmas music at a thrift store for $1.99. The binding was in rough shape, but it didn't appear the book had ever been used otherwise. To take it apart and keep the sheets intact, I removed the binding and then carefully removed each sheet of music. We used about 15 sheets of just the note pages and about 8 sheets with the song titles. I think ripping the edges of each sheet on all 4 sides would give a really pretty look as well, and you could achieve this by adding water to the edge and carefully pulling the page apart to create a rough look. Once we had all the pages we needed, I began to stain them. I actually had both coffee and tea on hand, so I used a combination, but either will do the trick by themselves. I did this process twice, once to give the entire page an aged color, and then after it dried, I went in again to add those extra aged areas in random places to give them some additional character. Keep in mind, you don't want to oversaturate to the point it breaks down the paper. You just want to add the color. Again, for the second step of staining, I just went randomly to add darker color to the already tea-stained paper. Once they had completely dried, we started the process of placement. We knew we weren't going to frame the canvas, so the sheets needed to hang over enough to cover the sides. I also wanted them haphazard so that they appeared to be tossed down, and so we made them random. We started with the note pages first, saving the ones with titles to be placed on top so that the Christmas songs would be visible. Keep in mind, you won't need to buy a new canvas if you can find an old canvas print at the thrift store. We just couldn't find one in the size I wanted, so we opted to use one of Cory's canvases we had on hand. To start the process of adhering the sheets, you'll use a generous amount of matte Mod Podge first to the entire canvas, including the edges. Once you have the first coat on, you'll begin adding your sheets. Add Mod Podge as you work to adhere them to each other. You'll give it all a final coat at the end. And Cory was being super careful to make sure he had enough overhang to cover the sides of the canvas. If you choose to frame your art, you won't have to do this step. With the song titles being the last sheets, we made sure to place them down randomly, again to give that tossed down appearance. I truly love the look of this art, and it gives me a backdrop for seasonal decorations no matter what I choose to do or what color I choose to use. It's such a versatile piece of art to add in for Christmas. For the sides, you'll want to be sure to add enough Mod Podge to keep everything down, and then just fold the sheets over and add more Mod Podge. We waited to trim off the excess to allow everything to dry and adhere. We used 2 8-ounce bottles of Mod Podge for this 30 by 40 canvas. Once you have all the sheets in place, you'll add another generous amount of Mod Podge over the entire piece, including the sides. I had Cory add some screws to the back for ease in hanging my decor and adding embellishment to the art for Christmas. I absolutely love how it turned out, and I know it will be a staple piece for our home. Our cost for the project was $10 since we had most things on hand. If you had to buy everything new, it would cost you approximately $39, but remember, you can always search for a secondhand canvas and music sheets to save yourself money. Our third project today is to recreate this brass deer head from Antique Farmhouse, costing $108. You'll need a deer head, spray paint, rub and buff, and spray sealant and matte. We found this deer head from At Home for $34. I love the detail on it, but I didn't like the faux wood look, so I decided to give it a transformation. I first started with Rust-Oleum's metallic spray paint in the color Champagne Bronze. I gave the deer 2 coats, allowing to dry in between coats. The next step is to give it that aged brass appearance, and the best way to achieve this look is to mix European gold and ebony rub and buff and blot it on. I like to add just a touch of the ebony to the gold to give a deeper appearance, like the brass has aged over time. I prefer to use a sea sponge for this technique since it has more surface space, but I was all out and so I used a foam brush. It was a lot more difficult to get the rub and buff to blend, so keep that in mind. It will work with the foam brush, just not as easily. Make sure you blend out the colors so as to not leave harsh lines. You do want a bit of blotching because that gives you the look of aged brass. Another reason I love to blot it is that it creates a texture that wouldn't have been there otherwise. The key to creating this aged look is to just keep blending the colors together. And since this deer had some indented details, I used a small foam brush to shade those in darker. As a final step, take your brush without adding any more product and just lightly wipe over the entire surface to blend everything together. Cory gave it a good coat of sealant to help protect the finish. Be sure to use matte to keep that look of the aged brass. And I absolutely love the way this deer turned out. We saved $73 by creating our own look, and if you had to buy everything new to complete this project, it would cost you $68. But again, keep in mind that you can always find these things to transform secondhand and use paints you already own to save on cost. Our next project is to recreate this crystal tree from CB2 priced at $179. You'll need 1-inch marbles, 3/4-inch marbles, and 1/2-inch marbles, some gallery stained glass effect paint, and 6-inch plexiglass rounds. I learned a few things that I can pass on with this project, something I learned after I completed mine. The inspiration piece doesn't have all the marbles completely touching except where they are attached. In fact, you should leave some gaps to allow light to filter in. I also didn't have the 3/4-inch marbles, and I should have bought them. I actually had some very small marbles on hand and used them to plug all the gaps between the larger marbles. But I think it detracts from the larger, more pretty marbles. So if I had to do it again, I would have left out the assorted tiny marbles. I also am very excited to try the gallery paint by Plaid. It's a paint that is used to give a stained glass appearance, and I had never used it before. And I will say it does exactly what it promises, even though I was a bit skeptical at first. The plexiglass I ordered from Amazon comes in a set of 2, and they are covered with a protective sheet to keep them from getting scratched. They were perfect for this project. To begin, you'll need to divide your marbles in half to paint, so that you have some amber colored pieces and clear pieces. I chose the color Cocoa Brown from the Gallery Paints by Plaid. It gave me the perfect amber color. I also chose to use a plastic bag to paint them instead of brushing each by hand. Using a brush would have given a much clearer finish, but overall, I was happy with the look once they had dried. This paint also says not to shake or stir. I added paint to the bottom of the bag and added a few marbles at a time to make sure they coated evenly, and then poured them out onto a paper plate to dry. I made sure to shake them up periodically as they were drying to prevent the marbles from sticking to the plate. The paper plate I have is coated, so it also helped. True paper plates would probably have stuck and dried to the finish. I was not sure about the paint. It was opaque at first and I wasn't sure it would be drying translucent, but I decided to trust what it said it would do, and by morning, magically, the marbles were a beautiful translucent amber color. To start, I decided to leave myself a bit of a lip on the bottom, so I began the first row of 1-inch marbles about 1/4 of an inch in towards the center. As you progress through the rows, you'll want to glue the marbles about 1/4 inch in from the last row to give you that tree shape. Another thing I would suggest is to use a more secure glue like E6000 in conjunction with the hot glue, which I didn't do. I did have some popping loose as I worked, so I would suggest working on this project in stages to allow for drying time, maybe just a few rows a day for a couple days so that you have a more sturdy structure. This project does take some time, but the overall finished project is absolutely stunning. I did use the 1-inch entirely on the base row, but from there up you'll want to randomly alternate 1-inch and 3/4 inch marbles, as well as randomly select the color of marble, amber and clear. As you get about halfway up the tree, you'll want to start adding in the 1/2-inch marbles with the 3/4 inch marbles instead of using the 1-inch, alternating once again in a random pattern. Again, I made the mistake of using those really tiny marbles to close in the gaps, and I really think the gapping is what makes it shine even more. Still, ours turned out really, really pretty. We saved $144 by creating this look ourselves. If you had to buy everything new, you could expect to pay $38. Our 5th project of the day is inspired by this Magnolia brass and wood library ladder priced at $108. For this project, you'll need 2 1x2x6 boards, one 1x4x6 board, we use poplar for all, and 1/8 inch and 48 inch dowel rod, 1/2 inch brass tubing, finials, and wood stain. We are keeping our ladder at 6 feet, which is the length of the boards. We chose poplar for all the wood so that the stain would remain consistent. Different wood species can stain differently. The brass tubing is relatively inexpensive and can be found on Amazon. We had this from another project and thought it would work for the brass elements to copy the Magnolia ladder, but we didn't have enough to make a full rung out of it, so we're using wood dowels in the center with the brass tubing on each end to create the look. The dowel would be hollowed on the ends to allow for the tubing to fit inside for each rung. I found these pretty finials on Amazon, and although they are birch wood, should stain very close to the poplar. Cory first cut the dowel into 8-inch pieces, 3 in total for each rung. The end of each dowel was hollowed using a 1/2 inch drill bit on both ends to allow for the tubing to be inserted. He drilled into the ends about a 1/2 inch on each side. Cory then made sure to sand off any rough pieces and smooth the edges of the dowel. To create the holes for the rung to sit inside the side rails, Cory used a guide made from painter's tape to keep from drilling all the way through the wood and created 1/2 inch holes for each rung on each side rail, a total of 6 holes. He also used the same bit to drill out a hole for the finials at the top end of each rail. Next, he had to cut the brass tubing into 6 5-inch pieces to place on either side of the wooden dowel to create the rungs of the ladder. He also smoothed out the ends of the tubing after cutting. Cory then cut the support brace for the top and the bottom, measuring 18 inches in length from the 1x2 inch board. All that was left was to glue and nail the support braces into place. Cory made sure everything was square before attaching the board. Adding the final touches, Cory glued the finials into place. The next morning, he gave the ladder a good sand, making sure to remove any stickers on the wood and the residue they left behind. Cory made some wood filler with wood glue and sawdust to fill in the holes the nails had made in the support boards. He sanded those smooth after they had time to cure to prep it for staining. We chose Jacobean by Minwax for the stain color. I don't know about the rest of you, but watching stain go on a fresh board is just so satisfying. I love the color, and the poplar took the stain perfectly. I thought this brass and wood library ladder was beautiful, and I knew it would make a great addition not only to the holiday season, but all winter long to hold our seasonal blankets. This beautiful ladder cost us $46 to make, saving us $62. To make it, buying all the supplies excluding power tools and other miscellaneous woodworking necessities, it would cost you $56. Our sixth and final DIY for today's video is another of our own creations, a gold pedestal tray. You'll need a dinner plate, candle holder, wood base, spray paint, and rub and buff for this project. We tend to shop clearance sections and things on sale because we end up paying the same as we would at a thrift store these days. We had some miscellaneous things on hand and decided to make a pretty pedestal tray that would work for not only the holidays, but any time of the year. To make sure the base was solid because the dish is ceramic and a bit heavy, Cory pre-drilled a hole in the center of the candle holder as well as the wood base. For added security, I'm also using some E6000 to hold it as well. Before attaching the plate to the base, we made sure that the clear tabs on the bottom of the candle holder were removed so that we would get a good bond to the surface of the plate. Using the E6000 glue, I applied a generous amount to the base. I also added some hot glue for a more instant bond and then attached it to the underneath of the plate. To create that seamless look, Cory added some joint compound to the gaps. Once it had dried, he sanded it smooth. We chose the color Champagne Bronze, which is our favorite to use for aged brass. Cory gave it 2 coats, allowing to dry in between. To elevate our tray just a bit, I'm using that rub and buff combo I love so much, the European Gold and Ebony, to age this tray up a bit. I mostly deepened the edges of the rim and base to add that aging effect, buffing in as I went. I did deepen the overall color as well, but going more sparingly on the main surfaces and really concentrating the darker colors on the edges. We also gave it a good coat of sealant, which I forgot to video for you. I love how this little tray turned out, and I already have it in use. Our tray cost us $10 to make, and if you had to buy all the supplies including paint, you would spend approximately $37. We truly want to thank you all for being with us today. Our goal with any of our DIYs is to create high-end looks for much less than the retail pricing. If you are starting any project from scratch, buying paints and other supplies, you will spend more upfront, but you'll have those supplies on hand for the next project, and it will save you in the long run. We tried to give you the full picture of what things would cost if you had supplies on hand versus how much it would cost if you had to buy it all. These DIYs are something we use and always strive to create the best look for less, even if that means shopping at places that may cost a bit more money but are quality items that will last us. We hope you found some inspiration, and if you enjoyed today's video, please do hit that like button and share it with someone you know. If you're new to our channel, we would love to have you as a part of our community. We do all things home, decorating, DIYs, and shopping for antique, vintage, and thrifted treasures. If those are things you love, please click that subscribe button and don't forget that little bell notification. It will let you know when we upload our latest video. We truly want to thank all of our subscribers for their continued support of our channel and for all the sweet and thoughtful comments you leave for us. We are so grateful and blessed beyond words. Wishing you all an amazing week ahead, and we will see you very soon in the next one. Bye for now.